Welcome back to Next Step Career Corner, the podcast where we explore real career journeys, leadership growth, and the pivots that shape meaningful work. Today, I'm joined by Ayse Trail, an ESG and sustainability leader who has built a truly dynamic career across nonprofit, government, education, and now corporate environmental strategy. Ayse currently serves as a sustainability manager for aerospace, defense, and marine business at TE Connectivity, where she's helping drive large-scale impact through net zero strategy, circular economy thinking, and data-driven ESG leadership. From helping Lovevery earn its B Corporate certification to launching reusable packaging innovations to shaping sustainability goals inside global organizations, Ayse brings both passion and practicality to the work of protecting our planet. And she has a powerful story about finding purpose, building credibility, and navigating a fast evolving field. So let's jump in. Ayse, thank you so much for being here today. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me.
This is going to be so much fun. So we connected on LinkedIn, and it's such a small world. So I want to start with, let's just talk about your career path. Fill in our listeners about, since you graduated with your degree, how did your career come about?
Yes. So my career probably started all the way from when I was in high school, when I was literally picking up bottles and cans around the school. I was doing the recycling program there, and I was a Girl Scout. And when I was a Girl Scout, it was my Gold Award to implement composting at the school as well. And I'm one of those people that if people tell me I can't do something, I'm like, I got to prove you wrong, and I'm going to do it. So I actually was able to connect with different people at the school to be able to implement the composting program, worked with people around the community to put it in place, and I was able to prove that person wrong. So it was a very good point and got my service award from the high school. And I think that really sparked it. And I started all the way with my first job being with a nonprofit called Rising Sun Energy Center at the time, but now it's Rising Sun Center for Opportunity, where we work on doing energy and water assessments in people's houses. And that's where I was able to have that first like real local impact, where I was able to go into people's houses door to door and installing efficient light bulbs and installing aerators and other things. And that's where I had my first big sustainability experience for it, other than in the recycling element, but really expanding more within energy, water, and waste for it. I studied environmental toxicology because I was very interested in how toxins can impact both the environment as well as our own health. But when I went into that, I found that I was very limited in terms of the amount of impact that I could actually be making for it. I worked a couple of government jobs, and I did one research project that it wasn't until the lady like 2 years later told me how that research was maybe going to be used to influence policy for it. So that's where I really wanted to pivot and get into what I discovered as corporate sustainability, which is really thinking about what I was doing in those houses all the way in high school of putting energy and water efficient measures to then have that large scale impact at the corporate level. And we hear so much of it from people blaming corporations for all the pollution and the impact happening to it. So wanted to be able to be a part of that change and make sure that we can actually be doing that. It started off with Lovevery, which is a stage-based toy company, to be working on the play kits and how we redesign those. But it was a very small scale with that. And that's what I liked about being in the corporate world, when you have things like manufacturing and other processes that when you make a product and it goes out into the world and it has an impact, from as you're creating it, how can we be improving that process to be reducing the environmental impacts while still needing the products that we'll need in our day to day. So that's what got me to the corporate sustainability side. And truly being in this position, I feel like every project that we put in place is making a difference within our communities for it.
That's amazing. But now you're not at Lovevery, you're at TE Connectivity. So what do you do there?
Yes. So my job at TE Connectivity is that we're a global company of over 80,000 employees, and we have different business units that are working on different product lines. So I'm specifically in aerospace, defense, and marine. TE Connectivity as a public company works on making corporate sustainability targets, and then me within the business unit where we're actually making the product works to see how can we achieve those targets set by the corporate and do those within our own division. So that's where I help lay out the strategy in terms of our energy, water, and waste metrics. We've also been working on the scope 3 side, so connecting with people within design engineering, manufacturing, logistics, all the other teams together to see how can we be reducing our impacts and also improving operational efficiency. And then from there, working to have the sites as well as the different teams be tracking their progress with those projects and really seeing incrementally over the quarters how we've been improving, and also seeing from our metrics, is that being reflected or is further work needing to be done to ensure that we're reducing our environmental impacts.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay, so at home, like you said, we could do the light bulbs and the water and things like that. But at work, what are some what advice do you have for those of us at work that want as sustainability as a company? Maybe there's a team, maybe there's not. How can we support that effort?
Yeah, so I think as sustainability has evolved and how we have seen it grow over the years is that it initially started off as something as sustainability was the feel good thing that we were doing for the environment. But there's actually a lot of things of sustainability that is very much tied into what many different functional groups want to be working on. It's just figuring out how does sustainability tie into that element and how is it not only going to be doing what they already want to be working on, but is actually going to be supporting their efforts. So, for example, finance team, they love to have cost savings and they love to find ways to improve productivity. So, if we look at the projects that we're doing, how is us putting in an energy reduction project going to be helping to reduce our overall utility cost? Or how is this project going to help us to reduce the safety risk concerns that we have in our plant? Or how is eliminating a certain packaging not only going to save us money, but also be able to reduce the amount of labor hours that we're having to put something in place? So it's always looking at how that sustainability element can help their own metrics, but then just tracking it in a slightly different manner. So even going to the quality team, how are they reducing scrap? And they might be tracking it in dollars. So how can we track it into pounds of waste eliminated?
That's amazing. Okay, so look at our metrics and see if there's some cost savings, labor savings. All right, that's excellent. So how do you approach embedding ESG strategy in slow changing organizations or industries even?
Yes, I think that as I was thinking about this, they always say you can teach an old dog new tricks, but I've had some people at these sites, they've been there for over 30 to 40 years and they have been doing the same process the same way for so long, and trying to get them to change that habit is going to be really hard for it. And I think that's again showing to them about what is really important to them and what matters to them and how is that going to be improving it for them. So you might be having an operator that's been like, I've been doing the same process the same way all of this time. So thinking about if you're going to be making a certain change, how is that then either going to be making their life easier, or how is that then going to be reducing the cost of how they are doing the actual operation? Or even then thinking about, we think so much about what's happening in the moment, but then it's also thinking about what's happening afterwards. You can even think about it like you might throw away, you might get all of this Amazon packaging and then you just think to put it in the recycling, but how can you actually make your habit better to be reducing it? So thinking about if we're not having the production, how can we be reducing it during our non-operating hours? And overall, then that helps us with reducing, improving our productivity from that. But what I always try to relate to with the slow changes is then how is that going to make their job easier or help them achieve their targets versus just making it as another additional task. We all know in our jobs day to day, we have a lot of things to already be doing. So how are we thinking about how this is either going to help us achieve our targets for their teams or also to help make their life easier from it? I think that especially with sustainability, if you're not having some sort of savings or you're making it a harder process, then you're not doing sustainability right.
That's a big takeaway. Okay. Yeah, it should make sense. It should be logical and make sense and do something at the end with your metrics. That makes a lot of sense. What about your most impactful project there at TE? Can you tell us about that project?
So I have some different ones where it's not as much of a specific project, but it's more of a process that we've been having, and I'm a true advocate for. And they're called energy treasure hunts. It actually came to fruition from Toyota, who is kind of the big leader in terms of lean and Six Sigma, but it's looking about how we can be reducing our operational impacts, usually at a low to no cost. When either we're not in operating times or actually making it efficient during our own operations for it. And a big impact that I had from one of those energy treasure hunts is that we were going around the site, looking at things and seeing what things could be turned off or how could we be making it use slightly less energy when we don't need to have that operation occurring. And when we were doing that, we were going to one of our specific areas to process, and they have an anodizing line there. And usually you have it on 24/7, the same rate, no products in there during the weekends, but we're still using the same amount of energy. So it was then thinking, how can we reduce and optimize this? And usually, as you do this process, you get pushback or reasons as to why that hasn't been happening, as to why we can't turn it off. You know, maybe it's going to use more energy. It's going to take us more time to get to production. So that's where we had the thought of what if we could just put it on a standby mode where it's not fully going all the way down, but we're actually just reducing the temperature a little bit to reduce energy when we don't need it, and then be able to quickly bring it back up to speed for production. And as we did that discovery, we found that there was literally a standby mode that was already ready to go to be used and embedded at our sites. And just from the press of a button, we were able to save over $50,000, not only in terms of, you know, our operation costs, but that's a huge amount of energy reduction as well. And that was something that didn't impact, you know, slowing down production or anything like that. And it's having people open their eyes to see how they can do it differently. Or my main analogy when I think about an energy treasure hunt is basically an energy weight loss journey. You know, you can't be doing your same habits of just sitting back on the couch, eating a certain amount of calories and expecting to have the results for weight loss. It's the same thing with our energy usage. If we don't look about how we can be changing our habits, changing our routines, or you know, consuming a little less, then we're not going to be able to trim down on our energy bills because of that. So it's really the thing that I've seen impactful, not only at just one site, but multiple sites that have achieved this. And I think it's something that we still have a lot of low hanging fruit that maybe is not necessarily LED lighting, but it's just in the way of how we operate and how we can make it more efficient.
That's amazing. And I love the weight loss analogy because we all understand that.
Yes, everybody at some point has been on a weight loss journey.
Yes, yes. And you can't eat the same amount of calories. You just can't, right?
No.
You just can't. Okay, I think in the past we've talked about a project called Green to Go Pizza. Tell us about this project. How did it start? What did it teach you when it came to innovation and collaboration? What was the result?
Yes, that was actually a very fun project of mine and was probably what got me through COVID through most of the time. So I worked with a nonprofit organization at the time called Don't Waste Durham, and their main big factor that they had for that was their Green to Go program in Durham, North Carolina. And that is where we have a reusable takeout container program for that. So instead of needing to have the styrofoam containers, working with some of our local partners to be having a reusable option instead. But as the organization was thinking about this, we were also thinking there's a huge element of everybody loves pizza. Everybody's getting it quite often, and going through quite a few pizza boxes that, even though paper is recyclable, usually it gets soiled and it either has to go into the compost or it goes into a trash. So we saw it as a huge opportunity to be able to reduce a waste stream and be able to provide a reusable option. But again, for the sustainability element, for something like a reusable option, it might be costing a bit more to be implementing, getting people to change their habits. So then we had to think in the innovation side, how is this going to make it easier and better for people to be using it so that it's a more functional thing for people to be implementing? So we literally were thinking about the pizza, like, is this box going to help keep your pizza warmer for longer, or it's not going to get your pizza soggy? How are we having those different elements? So we met with the person that designed a certain one. We had some 3D printing options, working with some engineers at the school. We did some product testing with people to see how they would play it out. And we also got a grant for this project to be able to fund and get some more pilots out there for it. And it was then the true success of all that painstaking process of, the innovation and trying to get your idea through the door, and finally getting the approval for at least one grant, and finally getting it within an actual store that was using it, that really made it come to life. And that's what really made it rewarding to see, is that with some of this, it's a painstaking process and you want to give up sometimes at a certain point. But when you see the end result, you can really see how you're making a true impact within it. And I feel the same day-to-day gruesomeness with some of these projects implemented at our sites, that it takes us a long time. We're having to get the quotes, having to do it, but in the end, we see the result and the impact as to how it's either improving our process or making us reduce our environmental impact. So that's where I really learned a lot about collaboration with others, as well as also speaking to a ton of different team members, and as well engaging with the customer to be able to see what they would want to do to be able to adopt it. So it was a really rewarding process to be having for that, and hoping that we can get more cities and more places to be adopting a program like that.
Yeah, I haven't seen it around here, so I'll have to keep my eyes peeled. Maybe ask for that option.
Yes,
no, I love
right?
it. Okay, so leadership, a topic near and dear to my heart. So I know you're young in your career. So tell me, how do you lead in your organization right now? Because I don't believe you have direct reports, correct? Like you're in charge of your job. Tell me a little bit about your leadership role as an individual contributor at TE Connectivity.
Yes. So as a leader, I think it really is important to be having the hands-on experience, as well as directly engaging with people. There's some people that can take the approach of telling you what to do and say, go and good luck. But I take more of the supportive approach of saying, okay, you may need 3 projects that we need to be implementing, but where is it that you need the support? Do you need assistance with identifying those opportunities? Do you need some assistance with helping to find vendors and such, so that I can kind of be a middleman to help push those projects to fruition? But ultimately, it's still those members of those teams at the sites that are actually taking the ownership and taking it along. But sometimes the main thing that I found when coming to the organization initially is that some of these project ideas were things that happened maybe 5 to 7 years before I was there, but they didn't have the support to be able to get their project through. Nobody was there to help advocate for getting the funding. Nobody helped them to find other suppliers or vendors. So that's where I try to come in as a leader, where I try to help push those along, connect them with other members that may be able to assist them, and ultimately be that gal that asks for the money to help push it along. But it's also really training and guiding those people as well, because some of the things of them not getting the project is because they didn't make the right case for really selling the project that they wanted to be doing. Like, I looked at some of those proposals and I'm like, if I was looking at this too, I would not be, pushing for that approval either. So also helping educate them as to what things they can think about for that. And I think really in that too, being hands-on, engaging with them on site, providing them the encouragement and support, and just be willing to help. I know there was one person at the site that he needed an HVAC unit for I don't know how long, but nobody was helping him push that through. And I finally worked to get some vendors, get some quotes to be able to get that along. And now that we can finally get that approval for the capital, it's also made him more willing to assist me in the other projects to be pushing it along. So my leadership strategy is really to lead by example, but also be able to support one another so that we can push it along versus just all being in our own swim lanes trying to get things done, to help each other and encourage it to then be able to push them forward.
Yeah, I heard two very important things. You used your voice and you cross collaborated, right? Like you went out of your way to help somebody because you had expertise in an area that they didn't
Yeah.
have, right? And I love that. And I think a lot of workers can come in and I get it, right? Like this is my job, this is my box, this is what I'm only going to do. But sometimes to get your work done, you have to cross the aisle and go, okay, this is how we could do your job better. Let's work together. And it's the same goal, right?
Yes, exactly. And I cross so many lines and so many different departments for it, but it's not until you do that you can help open their eyes and see a different way of looking of how their work may be applicable to sustainability, or open their eyes as to how they could be pursuing getting capital funding for a project.
Right, right. And in my experience, I remember working with an accountant. I went down and met her and asked her some questions, and she was shocked that I came to her desk. But going down and learning what she was doing and how she was doing her job helped me understand what I needed to do to help her job. And so there was more efficiency there. And then IT was the other big partner. Like, what are you talking about? And understanding how to do their job. It wasn't that I was doing my job wrong, but I did it better. So there was efficiencies for them and they could do their job better. And you're right, they wanted to help more when I needed things. Right. So building that partnership and having that voice, it's a big deal.
Yeah,
It's a
and I
very big
think
deal.
also brought up a good point in terms of, understanding what are their pain points, what's hindering them from it. It's not until you have those conversations that you can be able to do it. It's a much different conversation of telling somebody that they need to do something versus we need to achieve this. How can I support you in terms of being able to do that?
Right. Absolutely. So, how do you stay optimistic and energized in a field that can be slow moving? Because, like you said, some of these projects, it sounds like it takes years to complete. So, how do you stay energized with that?
I know it's one that definitely can get things going. But what I think about, and I said this all the way from when I was doing college applications, is my passion is the fuel that keeps me going every day. And sometimes, you're having your low spots in different areas. But what I find, particularly within my role here, is that I have so many other people that support me. So even though I'm one sustainability gal, I have different people in different functions at different leadership levels and other places that then they can come and support me within the process. But it's also one of those things of just being able to still see the light at the tunnel of how is this going to be helping achieve our targets, thinking about the big success that we're going to be having at the end, or the third option of somebody telling me that I can't do something and then I get stubborn and I have to prove them wrong. That
I mean,
one
we always
also
have that.
usually comes with some success.
I'm going to do this no matter what. Oh, I love that. Okay, so as a leader, right? How do your personal values guide you in your decision making?
I think that, it is in my own personal values that we need to be reducing our impacts on the environment. But, everybody can also say that no matter what you're doing in your life, we can also be looking at how to be doing things more efficiently, how to be eliminating waste from our life and such. And that's what I really adopt in my day to day too. Like I could be having a ton of different cups around or taking a ton of different bottles from things, but just by having this one bottle, it really does make an impact for it. And it's really helping show people how, one action can be truly making an impact. And I think a lot of times people think, I'm just one person in 7 billion people, so it's not going to be making an impact. But truly, with the things that we do from an environmental standpoint, it really does make an impact. And when you change one mind, that's when you truly see more of that impact. And it's also when I have one person that tells me, like, I started using reusable bags because of what you told me, or, oh, we started looking at this innovation at our site from that best practice that you showed us. That though it's not one big thing, but it's those little tidbits of success that helps really, kind of keep fueling me to be finding the next big project or the next things. Or like, I'm working on a solar project now. It's been happening for like over 2 years that we've been investigating this and such, but I have different people supporting me along the way, but we're also having these little tidbits of other successes that are helping to show that this one project, if it's not going to get done, it's not going to be bogging us down, because we're still making so many strides and achievements.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that. So, to close this out, what advice do you have, especially for young women entering the workforce on leadership and maybe doing their job well? What advice do you have for them?
I think the biggest advice that I could give is to get the experience, all the way from when I was in college, in undergrad to graduate. I was always doing 2 to 3 different things, whether it was internships or jobs or other things. But it was when I did those that it really helped shape what I wanted to be doing in the future. But it also helped me get some of those leadership skills at a smaller scale before, taking on this big girl job of, managing and overseeing 24 sites with sustainability. If it wasn't for me starting off with, doing that like green to go pizza pilot and leading that innovation for it, it wouldn't have helped me get to the scale to then be able to go to this large direction, as well as getting the hands-on experience is what's also going to help you shape as to which way you want to be going. Like, I might have at first been considering nonprofit, or I was thinking government level. And when I was doing that painstaking research at that government office, that's when I realized, like, this isn't the path for me, that I wanted to be doing something of more people interaction and doing more people engagement with that element. But it wasn't until I got that hands-on experience for it. So the courses are valuable within that work, but ultimately being able to apply it is what's going to really help you. And no matter where you're at in your career and doing that, it's just getting started, and to be able to challenge yourself in those, to be able to help yourself grow, but also help see if you want to be pivoting one way or another.
And as a career coach, even volunteer experience matters on a resume, right? If you have school and courses and internships, volunteer experience is right up there. So
yes,
yeah,
yep.
absolutely.
Green to Go Pizza was all volunteer based, and I dedicated a lot of hours to that. But doing that project and some other volunteer experiences from that is what really helped shape me because of that, while also benefiting my community.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing today. This was amazing.
Yeah.
So thank you for listening to this conversation with Ayse Trail. A reminder that sustainability leadership isn't just about environmental policies. It's about people, purpose, and the courage to rethink how business is done. If today's episode sparked something for you, whether it's an interest in ESG careers, a desire to create more impact in your own role, or a reminder that one person can influence systems, I'd love to hear your takeaway. Connect with me on LinkedIn or send a message through Next Step Career Services. And if you enjoyed this episode, please follow, rate, and share the podcast so more leaders and job seekers can find support, inspiration, and next step clarity. Until next time, remember, your career story is still being written, and you are always allowed to grow, realign, and lead in a way that reflects who you are and the world you want to help build. Thank you, everybody.